told that I am too sensitive. I grew up in my culture where I come from, it's a border region, so we have been occupied by Italy after World War One, and it was an Italianization. It has its own like identity and generational trauma, the war, and about fighting the rights to speak your language, actually. And it's really rough. Like for me, I experienced the culture as rough. You have to toughen up, and you have to like, and that came like I'm second generation World War II. And so I was like very sensitive, and I really heard many times you were too sensitive. And so I was really hiding a lot inside myself.
Today, I am so excited to have Martina Dressel back on the show. Martina is a curandera. Is that how you say that, Martina?
Curandera,
Curanda?
yes.
Okay. Can you say it again?
Curandera.
Okay, I love the way you say it.
It,
Who works with the Amazonian plant master plants in the Shabibo lineage of Maestro Ricardo Amaringo. She started her healing journey with plants in 2009 and has spent extensive time at Nihu Rayo Centra Espiritual in Iquitos, Peru. Iquitos, Peru.
Iquitos, yeah, Iquitos.
Maybe I
Yeah.
should have you read this, where she supports and guides people through the healing process. She is also a licensed somatic experiencing practitioner and integration coach. While Martina travels extensively, she was born in South Tyrol and has lived there throughout her life. Martina is fluent in Italian, Spanish, German, and English, and brings her multicultural perspective to the growing global community of people seeking plant medicine experiences. So, welcome back to the program, Martina. Haven't
Thank
seen
you.
you for a while. You've been busy jaunting all over the country, as
Yeah.
I have too. So, so anyway, it's great to have you back. So today I wanted you to come back and just talk about healing a little bit. I mean, this is what all of us in this, in this area of our, who are interested in the spiritual realm and whether it's plant medicine or it's meditation or whatever it might be, it's all about healing and growth. And so let's tell us about, can you share how you initially came to, I guess, therapy and your first steps in recognizing that healing was really needed for you in your life?
Yeah, so that was I would say mid early 20s in my life, where I really realized something I cannot figure it out on my own. So I was dealing
Right.
with depression and health eating disorders and panic attacks, but I really didn't understand what was going on. So I was seeking therapy and help, but it didn't really sink in or really help in the sense of something was missing. It really didn't translate
Right.
into life. It was very good in retrospective to set the tone for everything, but just talk therapy was not enough for me. And my conception, or like my concept back then for healing, was kind of like, okay, I do this a certain amount of time and then I feel great forever, like something like that. And then life will just be how I imagine it to be. So I was also very much into a fantasy thinking about what I wanted for myself in my life. And I didn't really get how the challenges of life will always come up and show up. But I didn't have enough capacity to face them. And so I realized back then that I was kind of getting frustrated because it didn't like had the outcome that I wanted.
Right.
Like, you know what I
Kind of want to
mean?
just get it
Feel like,
done
yeah,
and
what else
move
do I
on.
have to do? Every week therapy, and I'm still in the same, bad depression feeling. So it felt almost like back then I was like doing what is supposed to do, but the result was like not happening. And I thought the result was happening only by having a talk therapy. And so it was kind of really disconnected in a way. But back
Right.
then, I really didn't also know and understand what was happening to me and what, what impactful experiences do to me. And one part was that I had this image of, or this like image of like fairy tale situation happening in my life. So that was actually one of the consequences from my trauma history, but I didn't know back then. So I was chasing that and getting more frustrated and just like, yeah, there was not a lot of information back then about healing or how we deal with certain things.
I
So
can
therefore,
really I can
yeah,
really relate to what you're saying because I actually had a therapist once tell me that,
yeah,
it's like I want to live a fairy tale life. That's how I feel like life should be. And it was interesting because I was kind of feeling, the same way as you. What were you like as a child? Were you a really sensitive, intuitive
yeah.
child?
I was very sensitive, and I was always told that I am too sensitive. I grew up in a little, my culture where I come from, it's a border region, so we have been kind of occupied by Italy after World War One, and it was an Italianization. It has its own like identity and generational trauma. The war and about fighting the rights to speak your language, actually. And it's really rough. Like for me, I experience the culture as, rough. You have to toughen up and you have to like, and that came like I'm second generation World War II. And so I was like very sensitive and I really heard many times you were too sensitive. And so I was really hiding a lot inside myself. And I loved the nature and all that. I was really curious about that. But as soon as I became a teenager with 10 years, I was really withdrawing into my room
Right.
because I felt too sensitive. And that's where this fairy tale thinking came more because I didn't feel accepted in my
Mhm.
environment. I didn't feel, part of my environment. And that paired with trauma history, that kind of caused that, oh, I just have my own world. And then I was chasing that world and didn't
Mhm.
like, could
Right.
could never reach that.
Yeah, yeah. So
Yeah.
what was it that that started you on a healing journey before we get into plant medicine that you really felt like that some things were happening and you were able to deal with that? And one reason I'm asking is that, I think of the children of our world here. You're talking about, I assume, back when there was no social media, and you can imagine how kids how kids feel now comparing themselves to everyone and all of that. So what were your first steps when you were like, "Oh yeah, so this is I understand a little bit more now and this is starting to help me."
Yeah, that was later on in my mid-30s when
Right.
I came into plant medicine and when I knew more about the nervous system. And actually, when I realized and learned more about the nervous system, then I realized, oh, now it makes sense. Like it makes sense how I react. It makes sense how I respond, and that kind of took away a lot of weight for me. And what I wanted to say about the social media, which is really like true, it's more present, but I did it without social media.
Yes, yes, that's what I
You
mean.
know,
Yeah.
yeah, like I did it even without the comparing and the feeling I'm not part of the herd and I'm weird and I'm extra, It's just like I think in them what is the difference with the social media now? They present a thing and it's visible. They present even more, it's an image that you could aspire. But
Right.
it's like, it's like in culture or in society, I feel like, my question is always, where are you actually really supported in being yourself and being, finding what is okay for you and finding what is your gift that you want to bring forth, and how do you show up for people and how do you show up for other people and how do you treat people and all that, those things, So I feel like that's what I was really interested in creating the space. And for me, that goes back when you really, focus on yourself first and heal and your relationship with yourself. Then you can also, be different in the world.
Right. So was it plant medicine that actually started? Because I know you studied
Yeah.
somatic work. Was that before you started doing plant medicine?
No, that was later. So actually, the plants brought me to the somatic work.
Okay. So
So I
tell us
did,
a little bit about that.
yeah. So about the plant and the somatic work, yeah.
Yes, yes.
So the plant medicine was very crucial for me to understand my traumas, like what was actually going on, because many times it's like, oh, this is normal. And I encounter that these days sometimes too. You feel like everything that this like all this like overwhelming experiences, no support, violence or whatever, you kind of normalize it at once. And then it becomes almost like I'm not capable. I'm
Right.
not capable of living. I'm not capable. Everybody else has it together. That's when you compare yourself. Everybody's having a life or being successful and I'm not. And I cannot sleep at night. I'm not capable. And so the plant medicine helped me to, in the process to realize, oh, okay, there's things that are blocked and there's like things that are not being processed. And so that was my possibility to heal more. But then it also, I got my curiosity from the plants where I felt like, what is actually happening to us? What is actually happening inside us when we are having overwhelming experiences that we cannot handle or that have been too soon, too fast, too early, too much, or nobody was there. And so that brought me to work of Peter Levine, where he kind of explains, oh, how we respond to those things in a certain way. And when I read those books, I felt like, oh wow, I understand what happened to me.
Right. That's a
Yeah,
somatic work.
yeah, the
You're
somatic,
right.
yeah.
Yes.
So I felt like that happened to me. That's why I was in the fairy tale world, because that I didn't use drugs or something to medicate, but I went into fantasy land.
Right.
That was like, I always say I was addicted to clouds because I was in the cloud.
Right, right.
So that
So
was
when
my
you
thing. Yeah.
when you say plant medicine, can you just expand on that a little bit? Because there's a
Yeah.
lot of, I did
Yeah.
a series on plant medicine and you were probably in it where we talked a lot about the different medicines. So how was that for you? Because I know you don't only use ayahuasca, but also, a lot of master plants. So could you just briefly tell us what you mean when you say that?
Yeah, so that is ayahuasca from the Amazon region in
Mm-hmm.
in Peru, and it's my lineage is the Shipibo tradition, and the Shipibo tradition works really treatment based, one-on-one. So, and it is a ceremony that is held in darkness and without any instruments, only with icaros. So the icaros are the healing songs.
Right, right.
And the healing songs, they move the energy. So everybody receives a personal song in the ceremony that is based on the intention that I'm working on. And then to remove what is blocking me, the fear, the pain, the anger or whatever is showing up. And that is linked to also the master plants, because the master plants are different plants from the Amazon. A lot of healing plants are there. And they are used in the Shipibo tradition in form of a diet. And that means it's a longer healing process, so maybe 2 weeks, that you get, in addition to ayahuasca, you receive a plant that you drink during the day that has any psychoactive components, but they are opening your spiritual body, your emotional body, and it's more possible to heal because they are really are able to cleanse your mind, your heart, your body, and your spirit in a different way. And that means that we also have to diet in a certain way. That means with the plants, you go in a really sensitive process, because there's no salt, no sugar. We only eat fish, rice, plantain, really plain diet, and which opens everything even more up, because we have no flavor that kind of soothes us, but it brings certain feelings up, certain memories, and certain things that we need to work on. And that's when the plant can come in, like the healing even more. The plant can act more in our body and be active. And
Interesting.
yeah, and actually the Icaros are coming directly from the medicine, from the plant medicine diet, because the shamans, they need to diet long time, a year or 3 months in a row, that the chance will come. The chance, the Icaro is actually all the medicine that they dieted it for a long time, and then they channel them as a
For each
song
person.
for each person. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Interesting. It's funny because you don't hear very many people, at least in my experience, talk about the plant medicine and that the master plants and
Yeah.
how it really, really opens you up. Can you give us kind of an example of maybe one profound what you've learned? I know you've done plant medicine quite a bit, but something that was really what keeps bringing you back?
Yeah. Bringing me back keeps is just noticing how beneficial it is for my life. And when I notice, oh, there is still stuff that impacts my life, especially patterns,
Yes.
consequences of trauma. Like it's more that, like the consequence, how you see the world and how you see people and how you meet them. I would say like lack of safety or and that. So all those like things, when I see that, I'm like, okay, that I want to work on that. I don't want that to impact my life in the now. And so then that keeps going me back. And then I feel like, okay, that's what we work with the plants with a lot of intention. I bring this intention to the plant and said, like, can we please, I want to work on this. But then I have to work on what the block is, why I am still acting in a certain way. And I think we always know that from our lives, when this is happening, like things keep repeating.
Absolutely. Our lives are kind of like that, right? I heard someone say something once that every thought is either something from the past or something that worrying about the future, and when you sit and listen to yourself, your thoughts, it's so very true, these loops. Yeah. So this all of this information that you've gotten through the plants, how do you feel like that you can, let's say someone isn't interested in plant medicine, or it's, someone wants to take your knowledge and what you've gained, let's say to help help the young, what would you say that's been most helpful to you that could help people in their day-to-day life?
Um, it's actually that what I learned from many years, like you cannot make a change from your same energy. That's why the loops are happening as well, because we
Right,
try to change things, but from the same place, from the same energy. So, and also in our day-to-day life, if we don't, it's not for everybody, plant medicine or it's a master plants or ayahuasca, because it's a very, you know, potent experience and not everybody's ready for it, and that's okay. I am the last person to promote this as a one solution for all,
right.
but there is so many things that we can do nowadays. So I would say, and that is actually the thing that goes back to the somatic. If we pay attention more to what's actually happening in our body, also sensation wise, and include our body more in the picture, then there's many things in that you can do in learning more about yourself. So therefore, for me, the whole thing in healing is um, improving the relationship to yourself and really noticing that that is one of the most key relationships that we have in life. And we are trying to fulfill so many things outside, but actually that's how it really works when you're like really working through the things
Mm,
within yourself. And that's actually how you shift the energy inside.
right.
Because
Is it
you sh-
also getting more in touch with your higher self and your instincts and your versus just your thoughts in your mind?
exactly, because that is actually that's block. We have to kind of, open up to that more, that we don't go with the block like the mind and all those things.
Mhm.
This is what we are like when you say nowadays, when it's all about screens, it's a problem. And therefore, like I would say back to your question from before, in the daily life, I would say just nature in general, incorporating that in your daily life, it's so, so important and so potent. And it shifts the energy, it shifts the day, it shifts. And I always, I have this like small interventions, tips in nature, I would say, like when you just go and hug a tree and notice how it is to have, it on there. But not only walking and, then not walking and having the screen and
Right,
but
right.
walking and then, oh, there is a tree and I hug it and really noticing the flower and standing barefoot on the grass. And this is like 5 minutes, or, when we say, but those things like incorporating the nature and then having the bridge to the body, that could shift already a lot,
Mhm.
intentional intention and attention. So you bring the intention uh, on your walk, but also you pay attention.
Right. I love that. And
Mhm.
it's so important for us as adults to recognize this so we can mentor
Yeah,
to our younger generation. Uh,
yeah,
you said something on your one of your blogs about wholeness versus brokenness.
yes,
And you mentioned that healing isn't about fixing what's broken, but
mm,
remembering wholeness.
exactly.
To me, what that says is it's all about remembering, remembering who you are and quieting your mind and becoming more present and
Mhm.
listening to that inner voice, listening to nature, to
Yeah,
remember that this might be going out for a limb with some of my listeners, but I so many times just think, this is just kind of a play. This isn't really real, This is kind of just a show that's going on here, and I have to be the best I can, best I can be and not get too caught up in this. But that's my thing. But so talk a little bit what you mean about remembering wholeness.
Yeah, I mean that we have so much when we're on healing journey, sometimes we can get like into that story or idea that we, like what I said, we are broken. Um, I cannot show who I am because nobody wants to be with me because I'm that. And then maybe also that's how I show up for myself in that way, you know. And and then it just becomes more that situation of like, I need to be perfect to be loved. I need to be fixed to be loved. I need to be complete to be loved. And then we talk about self-love and we don't really know what that means.
Mm,
And I feel like, yeah, maybe there has been, everybody is kind of whole, but then when stuff happens or things happening, that impacts our wholeness. And therefore I say always like in my like healing journey, I can say that the hardest thing for me to achieve in healing is an intact, healthy self-worth. Because what is really difficult is that the trauma scatters that. And it's almost like a proof sometimes that, especially when it's relational trauma and with trust issues and people for caregivers, that you feel like it's almost like a proof you're not worthy because this happened.
right.
So I feel like that's really hard to capture sometimes. So for me it's like more, yeah, don't focus on you have to get, if I have this if I collect this piece, then I'm whole. If I complete this, it will never end. But therefore, I feel the remembering that you have been whole, that from the first place. So that is where you can kind of like bring it all together in a way that it is more wholesome and holistic,
Right.
and not that you like focus on what is like, the bad things that are like they contribute to that feeling. Um, so therefore, I feel like I see always that thing with trauma scattering your treasure and of self-worth, and then you have the gems that are all over the place, but they are still there,
Yeah. Yeah.
like they're scattered, but they're there. So you're not so connected. So you have to collect them and bring them together in the treasures. And then the treasure remembers all the gems and the wholeness. So that's how I see it, or how the image helps me to see that rather than to go into like like a rabbit hole of like, oh, I will never be healed. I will never be fixed.
Did you actually see the gym, the little scenario you just mentioned? Did you see that in one of your plant medicine journeys or?
It just, if I didn't see it in a vision, but it came as an idea to
Yeah,
me.
yeah.
Yeah. So as an idea. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I struggled with that, and just to say from one vision, I had that was really impactful to me when I was like really going, why Alaska? What else do I have to do? Like going into that, kind of thing, because I was like fighting for this fairy tale or whatever. And then ayahuasca said to me, open your heart to your life. And then I realized, oh, so ayahuasca, that message came really strong. And that was like, okay, that's not just a message that that you want to hear, that is
Mhm.
like super enlightened, but that's like a really direct indication. And when ayahuasca puts you into the place and into the direction, you have to open your heart for your life.
That's really interesting. I recently did a ketamine journey of course, with a medical professional. And I was just really curious because I've explored a lot the medicinal values of different plant medicines. And I remember one of my intentions was about a relationship that I have. And I mean, one of my closest relationships. And I was, trying to figure out what can I do, da 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 da. You know how your mind just loops, but this happened, and and
Yeah.
I remember I just got the message. It's just be kind.
Hmm.
I'll never forget that. It was just be kind. Because, my relationship, it's not like there's any trauma of abuse or anything like that. And
Yeah.
and I carry that with me now. I don't have to get so caught up in all of this stuff, It's
Yeah.
just be kind and be graceful, give one another grace. And I think that's kind of exactly what you're saying. You get those messages and they're
Yeah.
very potent. It's
Yeah. They
yeah,
land differently to you because you are in that open state. You know,
right.
it would be different if somebody says it to you. Yes, yes, I know I should, but it's different when you get it on a visceral level. I always feel
Yeah,
like that's like a body wisdom that is coming up, and that's what plant medicine or psychedelics can do for us. They
right.
land in a different way that you can actually really translate it into life.
Yeah, yeah.
Because being kind sometimes is not easy. And people always say, oh, yeah, just be kind. Yeah, okay. And how do you do that? But if you have this experience, something shifts that you can translate it
You
in the,
understand. It
you
makes sense to
understand.
you.
Yeah,
That's
yeah,
why we got the messages that we did because it makes sense to us in
yeah,
terms of, our scenario. And I know for people who don't, of course, meditation is so important. And then the holotropic breathing. I remember when I did my ayahuasca experience, which I probably will never do again, but you've done it so many times. That some of the people couldn't do ayahuasca because of medical conditions or whatever it might be, or
right.
maybe they just didn't want to. And the breathing technique was
Yeah,
really potent also. So, there are other things that people, and where you get messages, because I had an experience with that too, that was really, really profound.
yeah.
Interesting. So, Can you can you share a specific moment, or was it the first time you did ayahuasca where it was just like it was a breakthrough? And oh my gosh, I think that maybe I can heal and I can love myself. And was that one of your first journeys, or when was that? If there was an aha, or maybe there wasn't an aha moment.
My first ayahuascas were hard, but I noticed, okay, yeah, that now I understand my life. That was a aha moment, you know? And I understood that because before I thought there's something wrong with me,
Right,
that
right.
we together. So I think that was an aha moment that I had, the first one, where I felt like, oh, things makes just sense. How I walk in life makes sense.
Was it from like a past life, or how was it
Oh
that?
no, because of my trauma history, so
Right,
I
right,
could access that early childhood trauma and it was hard, but I noticed everything came together and it was fitting really into um, other like stuff that I know from my life. So it was
right,
like
right.
very okay, this makes sense. This now I understand my
And then you
life.
can begin to heal.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I thought it would be easier back then. But then, it went on. But now I'm so, like healing is my favorite topic. I'm so fascinated about it because I feel like I don't want to stop. It doesn't feel, it's just like always, like you said, growth and expansion. And for me, that's the meaning in my life. And it doesn't mean, therefore, also, it doesn't mean I'm not whole, but I just learn. And I want to learn how to have always a better life quality. If something shows up that is impactful and challenging, okay, what can I do? How can I show up for that? So I do feel that is actually pretty amazing, and it gets really fascinating for me. So I feel like I'm over that, over that hump of like, oh God, you know, uh,
Right.
it's a
How
drag.
Ah, so how can healing become like an integral part of your life instead of like this separate thing you do, you meditate, a few times a week, or how can it just become an integral part of life? Do you meditate, or how do you keep reminding yourself to go back to that energy?
I think what you're saying, that is actually the important thing when it becomes woven into your life and you not do like, oh, I do this retreat and then I just go crazy
Right,
or
right.
whatever. So it becomes an integrated part of life when you incorporate things that, you know, are important to you. Like for people, it's meditation. For others, it's like, for me, it's that, the writing, I guess, too, that I
Yes.
want to share. And then, and the thoughts the ideas that come up. And then also for me, mostly um, it translates how my relationships are and how I show up for people and what people I want to be close with, because that is what it really counts for me personally in life. That enriches my life, the experiences that I have and the experiences that I have with people. And so, um, and I know that might be difficult for some people, but I to be like close to people, and so um, it's always like what for the counts for the person,
Mhm.
also in healing, what counts for them. But there are like so many different ways, but then it's like, how is the values that you will live and how are they showing up? And then it just creates automatic connections that are people in with your same ideas and same vibrations and same things that they care about.
Right. Yeah, having that community that,
Yes. Yes.
yes, is
Yes.
so
Yeah.
incredibly important. And I mean, I
Mhm.
know some, including myself, really, who are on deeply on this spiritual path, but really, other than going to retreats or my podcast, it's not, people are not into this who I end up spending a lot of time with for one reason or the other. So
Yeah.
and that's okay too. I mean, everybody, you learn
Yeah.
from everyone and you still, but it's really important to have that community that, like you said, kind of live, not to judge or anything, but just live at a different vibration. Yeah,
Yeah.
kind of get it, can talk the talk and walk the walk, right?
Yeah. Because I don't believe in like meditating 2 hours and then not being people, like that's not for me so much.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
what do you feel like kind of passing the torch to, the next generation or to the universe? What what lessons do you, from your healing journey, do you hope to kind of pass on to the next generation?
Oh, yeah, it's a good question. I would say not to miss out on experiences, but that's maybe in general in life. And
Yes.
and that it's not like it's not meant to be that you get the full package delivered. It's like what doesn't challenge you doesn't change you. So there's like, yeah, um how you say, meeting the challenges and showing up for those,
Mm,
and and not missing out on experiences in life.
right.
And
Do you have specific techniques that you use? Let's say you're in a situation where you catch yourself like going into that loop, or something that just is really bothersome,
yeah,
and you feel your heart rate kind of. Do you have any just simple techniques that you use to help?
yeah, there are some of the somatic techniques. There is
Yeah.
like, they're like the techniques to kind of um make a sound, make a sound that's long, exhale, a woo, or really, yeah, other techniques that bring it back to the body. So usually when there is a possibility to be too much in the head, it's always interesting to notice, okay, and that's always the case. You notice when you're too much in the head, you don't notice as much the other body. It's like very the energy up there. So that's the technique would be then very like to focus and include the other parts of the body, even just dancing. And I sometimes I have this with clients, I give a homework just to dance to one song a day. It's 3 minutes, but it's just, and it doesn't, it's just about the movement.
Right, right. To kind of get the energy out and to have
Yeah,
the good
yeah.
energy coming in.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I think you're very, it's very, very, very simple technique. And it might feel a little bit weird. It might feel in the beginning a little bit reluctant to do it, but just put one song on and then just move. It shifts, it shifts.
yeah, shifts the energy.
Mhm.
Yeah, interesting. So what are you up to today? Are you doing some master plant work with people, or are you running any programs yourself? I
Yeah,
know you
so
and Savita were doing some things at one.
yes, we are doing some, we're bringing some groups in to the center where we collaborated. So yes, I'm leading retreat. I'm kind of leading groups to the center there that I can give the specific support, the special support. That's what we're doing like twice a year.
Right. That's in Peru, or is that
That's in
here?
Peru. Yeah, that's
Oh,
in Peru.
okay. Okay.
Mhm. Yeah, that's in Peru. And then what I'm mainly doing too is like, yeah, working with people like integrating their experiences or doing somatic work um, online as well.
Right. Right.
Yeah, yeah,
So do you have we need to wrap it up, but do you have any
yeah.
like just words of wisdom about the healing journey for a listener who's thinking, I just need to do something, and what can I do to begin this process?
Yeah, so being curious about um, how small things can shift your,
Mhm.
your day or some negative like energies doing your life, and just like being curious about what can shift, and being yeah, if they really want to do the healing, I think that is the most important thing. So that alone gives you the fuel to kind of, to be curious and to go out there and to see. And then another thing that I really would recommend, to find what really fits for you.
Right.
Like
Right.
like you said, there's so many things, but not everything is for everybody, right? So like I would say, like, there's so many options nowadays, even the breath work, and you said meditation, or so like being curious of trying a few things that help, but it might be challenging. So what I also say, like, it is not always that, it's not like a spa situation with healing. So it can be it can be challenging as well. But well, another thing that I would like to say is it needs consistency. So when you do things that with more consistency, that is better than just a little bit. And then, because if we are used to be in a certain energy or in a certain pattern for a long time, it's like really hard to shift that.
Right. Right. Do you still encourage people to get talk therapy? And if they can find a good person, or kind of what are the baby steps other than
Yeah,
awareness?
talk, talk therapy, honestly, I don't really recommend personally, unless it is somebody who really wants that. But I would like, there are like so many other things. There's like internal family system. There are like many. I would encourage to do some therapy that has some you know, some dynamics or some methods. Because for me, talk therapy, or how I had it, was like I talk 1 hour and the therapist doesn't say anything.
Right, right.
And that's not so. Something that is interactive and also challenges you. So
Mhm.
that's what I think. Like, I know internal family system is pretty, there's also EMDR therapy
Right.
that is also about. So like I would recommend more therapies in those rounds that have more interaction.
Right, right, that you're more
Yeah,
involved.
yeah,
Understood.
yeah.
Well, thank you so much for coming on the show today. I really appreciate it. I mean, healing is so important, not only to heal ourselves, but the world and to help help these younger generations. And I just really appreciate all your work and everything you're doing in Peru and now doing in Arizona. So if people want to find you or read some of your writings or learn more about what you're doing, how would they do that?
Yeah, I have this homepage, a blog. It's like at homewithin.org, because that's what I said. I feel like healing means to find your home within
Going
yourself.
home. Yes.
Yeah. And yeah, so that's there. And then I have a newsletter. And so I send out news when I am, bringing groups to,
Yes.
you know,
Yes.
yeah,
Wonderful.
yeah.
Okay, well, thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
And maybe we'll see you in Arizona one of these days.
Yes. When I'm traveling through, yes. Okay,
Okay, thank you, Martina.
that's enough. Bye. Thank you for having me.
You're welcome.